To know who we are, and where we're going, we must know how we arrived here. Welcome to REPHETIC, a revolutionary study of the Great Pyramid, which promises to rewrite civilization's history. Matt Shields.
Hello, Dave Hemstock.
Welcome to the REPHETIC podcast. Thanks for joining in. Like, subscribe, share.
Yep.
Hope you're enjoying it. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing?
You know, I love that question, right? Because I get to tell you anything I want about myself. I can go
pretty much,
any direction, right? Like family of four, broken home, like all the sad story, or
orphaned in Brooklyn.
Right.
I don't know enough to push back on any of it.
Right. I could just go on some wild tangent. I think the main reason here is after that, that ties in. Yeah, I was a kid. I was really interested in math, and I was like that. Little all thing math and science related, and
E equals MC squared.
Right. Yeah. Reading books of math books,
physics.
And,
Principia.
Right.
Let me dive into this.
Right. Yeah.
And Origin of the Species.
Yes,
Let me dive into that one.
Galileo biography. Oh yeah.
At age 9. What are you talking about?
Right.
Okay, folks, you're excused from this. No.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Similar to like Jeremy. Mm-hmm. Other people too.
Yeah.
It's like I can't understand all them big words. I'm like, come on. It's not that hard. Plus they can pause and rewind.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're interested in math.
Yeah.
And then so you get into metadata and all this stuff.
Yeah, so I've always been I was, like reading cereal boxes as a kid for the USDA requirements of like trying to figure out like how many servings and what was going on, and then where would I be? I mean, I was really into how do numbers all work together.
Nice.
And over time, I just a few years ago, I guess 10, 15 years ago now, decided to go back to school. I had a couple of attempts at college that did not go well for me.
Right.
So I didn't. Yeah.
I went to School of Hard Knocks.
Oh, no attempts even, yes.
No.
Yeah, I did the attempts at least, and then it just, then burned them.
So on that, and so you get back to college, but here's, and maybe it's just me, I got to sneeze. This is what I tell myself, is I have very little tolerance for learning trivia. If somebody's already done it, learned it, what, I'm not that interested.
Trivia, I get it. Foundations, though, I want to learn. I am very much like...
I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying, sure, the foundational things. But then also what I've learned is like if I'm paying attention and living, if I'm learning, then I can just go and compare notes to the same people that found these similar things, or came to the same conclusion.
Yeah,
that's gratifying.
Yeah, I agree, and I think. But I like some instruction and direction on how to get there. I think about...
not me.
Yeah, you don't like direction or structure. No. I worked at a high school for a while. I was teaching ACT, SAT prep classes.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And one of the exercises I did just to show... It was just a fun exercise that we went through how did calculus get invented, right? Actually how did derivatives and and it was amazing to me that... while they knew how to do it, because these are students, this was segmented, so it was a more gifted population that had already taken calculus and knew how to do derivatives.
Right.
I could actually walk them through
the origin. Why,
yeah, without them actually knowing they were inventing calculus.
Right.
So
well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I like the So I do think there's value in getting that foundation, so that way like, oh, this is why this happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my work.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
You do work? I didn't.
No, I mean,
loosely, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I meant,
I meant the history work stuff.
That's right.
So, okay. Well, So brothers, sisters, give us the family lowdown.
Yeah, I've got no biological match brothers or sisters all the way. So I got... I currently have living to one half brother, one half sister, biologically, and then two brothers that no biological, different dad, but that dad adopted me. So, and then I've got another brother that was half same biologically full from the adoption, but he's the one that died about a year ago.
It takes a village kind of family.
Yeah, I'm the lone the anomaly sitting out by myself. Yeah.
So your brother passed away?
Yeah.
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 I think I remember you saying.
Yeah, that was last April, so a little over a year ago. Yep.
So
Yep. And
mixed parent family.
yep, all parents all everywhere. No one else really. Yeah, I was definitely the lone wolf. Like, leave me alone. Let me study my books and do my computers.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
Well, so I was talking to my brother's episode, my sister's episode.
Mm-hmm.
We got this trauma bonding. You know, it's like, what? You don't really realize it till like afterwards.
Right.
My sister talked about these like flashes, like flashcards. Like
Yeah.
that's a sign. It's
Yeah.
a symptom of trauma or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So did all that, and yeah, on the data side. So when I went back to school, got a kind of a windy path, but ended up with my master's in data science, and yeah, we've worked heavily in data for a few years.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is how old is that field even? 60 years? 70, 60, 60-ish?
At least, and then you had like 80s and 90s where people started to get the ideas of
Right, programming,
Yeah,
data,
right.
implementation.
right, but didn't have the computing resources to do it.
Right, interface,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
So then the last 20 years is kind of when you see that good progression, from 2000s on to now.
Super quick, though.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
saying from an operating system and an interface to metadata,
Yeah.
where we are now.
Yeah. And compute and storage is the big things, right? If you can store, we can store so much more data now than we did 10 years ago.
It's a size thing, and what is it? Tell me what that constitutes, and allow me to be the dumb.
Okay. Well,
Just the what would you call it? Dumb layman.
I'd say 35 years ago we were looking at floppy disks, right? And
Right.
that held. I'd have to. Somebody would know on this. I'm sure.
64
Right. Something.
K or something.
Right. It was something ridiculously low.
Right.
To now, yeah, you've got a 256 gig flash drive.
Right.
Or terabyte flash drive.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
plug and play.
And those are transistors within the silicone chip. Is that what it is?
That I'm not the expert on.
Okay.
The physical
okay.
layout. Yeah.
I'm just saying that keeps getting smaller, smaller, smaller. Now
Yeah.
they're talking about quantum computing.
Yeah.
At the atomic level.
Yeah, and I think they're talking about it.
Of course.
Yeah, I think that. So that goes from ones and twos to three-dimensional space.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the concept on that, and it's so instead of that binary, you've got now basically like trig, right? You can do components of a three-dimensional like
okay.
this, and I think we think we're a lot closer than we actually are. Is my,
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
Well, it gives people something to talk about.
Yeah,
too.
like we've got these qubit computers that have quantum bits, but they're all regular They're not actually quantum computing. They're
Right.
just they've built enough regular computing to be a
on a small enough level.
Yeah,
So they can
like-
call it that.
yeah.
That's like telling the gal you'll be home for dinner,
Right,
or
yeah.
after one drink at the bar or something,
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
like, wait, 3 hours later. Or a buddy of mine, Jim Squires, passed away. He went out for bread, came back 3 days later. It's like,
Right.
that's not the equation.
Right. Yeah, so it's not the same. Yeah, telling people things aren't true. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's been a blow up in the data world, and I think part of that too is the blow up has been because not governed, right? I mean, if once you start governing it, you slow down the growth because you have guardrails. We have no guardrails.
Yeah, and that's also an issue.
A huge issue.
I mean,
the issue.
regulatory. Well, here, according to me, where that starts is we don't have how many scientists are legislators? Next to zero.
Right.
They're all lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
and they have no idea what is going on in the industry, unless they're told.
Yeah.
Right. So we have zero regulation on the next phase of
Right.
all information storage, data manipulation, you name it. Right.
Right. Yeah, and even of what data can be collected by who for what purposes.
And different places are
yeah.
caught up, like the EU
Yes,
regulations
right,
on
GDPR,
privacy, things
yeah.
like this. Okay, and so what happens? What happens if it never gets regulated?
Yeah.
Then what? All the bad people just start taking advantage of all the systems because
And already are, yeah, right? That's where you've got the misinformation, the use of AI generated videos that are not the person.
Deep fakes.
Deep fakes, yeah.
and also the infiltration of data capture of like every youth
Yes.
and their every habit.
Right. Right.
use times, locations, you name it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And this is something I could go on about all this forever.
It's fine. Yeah.
Where the new fascination with the Chat GPT over the last 3 to 6 months.
Yeah,
that people finally heard about this.
Since
right?
3.5 and 4.0.
4.0, right?
Okay.
Really kind of blew it up. I don't think like you wrote a book, right? Like we're here because you wrote a book.
It's not done yet.
It's not done,
and it's not published yet.
So,
but it's gonna be.
So you're writing a book. So at some point you're gonna publish it.
Yeah.
And Chat GPT is gonna steal it, right? Plagiarize you.
Yeah. I just thought of that today.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Well, I thought about just copyright infringement. I mean, they're in complete copyright infringement.
Yes.
From the data pool.
Yes.
And then skimming it, scraping,
right.
whatever you want to call it, and then putting out something new that's completely plagiarized.
Right. Yeah, and that's something like we haven't considered any of these. We're just so fascinated. Yeah, we're just so fascinated
with the toy.
Yeah, here's
it's
a
like,
toy.
Look, the two-year-old can walk. Oh wait,
right.
There's a bridge.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but I can put it in and say who's the coolest Marvel character, and now it's going to tell me a story. So therefore, this is wonderful.
But stolen from Marvel.
Stolen from Marvel and stolen from somebody else
the
who wrote
authors,
a book and
the
stolen,
creators, whoever. Yeah. Of course.
It's going to drop in some Shakespeare once in a while and drop in some different Toni Morrison, different writers, and not of course credit any of them.
Yeah.
And then you throw in the other side of it where somebody has to tag all of these
source material.
Yeah. And the tagging is being done by $15 an hour workers.
Right.
And so, we're just not really thinking about what we're doing. We're just excited by the toy.
Yeah.
And that's just ChatGPT is just the latest toy.
The incarnation, just because we all know about it and we're using it. Now, the same goes with video, AI, all this stuff.
Image recognition, chatbots, the pre-ChatGPT, all that,
So, big question, if and when, 5-star panel to make recommendations for legislation oversight.
Right.
Like, what are we doing? And then for the we don't like regulation crowd, like, first of all, those people are stupid. Okay. No, I mean, for real.
Yeah.
Your 40-hour work week, your workplace death benefit, your OSHA, you want to work in a factory that's not going to collapse, building regulation, you name it.
Yep.
Government imposed oversight.
Yes.
Our entire lifestyle, especially when it comes to safety workplace, you name it, right? Road safety, vehicle safety,
Yeah.
It comes from imposed government regulation. If not, you got all these rogue profiteers going to do whatever they want to do to get the profit and whatever.
Yep.
So we're seeing that again in this new information revolution, whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, 20, 30 years, whatever.
Yeah, and there's no end goal, right? The end goal is just, I think that's part of what's driving the issues is when you don't have a goal for something, you're just doing it to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't care if something bad happens, really, right? You're not trying to achieve anything
and
besides
you're faultless too.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, this is like putting lead in the gas.
Yeah.
Oh, look.
Yes. Yeah.
We can clean stuff as it burns.
Yeah.
This is a great idea.
Right.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
And then by the time you figure out it's bad, they're all off the hook.
Right. Yep.
Or it's like the big pharma stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, with indemnity. Do whatever you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Well, so that's all fucked.
Right.
Or gonna be. But so I think with the regulation, and again, sometimes leaders lead.
Yep.
Nations lead sometimes. Other times, it's going to be Norway or.
Right. And here we're too focused on capitalism, right? You can make money off it. You can try to eliminate lower wages, make money, do all this stuff using a tool.
Yeah.
Let's not.
And the lobbyists right now are telling the lawyers who govern us.
Yes.
Don't worry about it. We got it.
Yeah.
And they're going, okay, how much are you donating?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's craziness.
And my question to so many people has been like, show me a successful long-term, like unregulated, unguided technology.
Okay.
Yeah. Show me one like that didn't have some catastrophic implication somewhere along the line that you had.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like you use lead in the gas, right? Like every time we screw it up when we get too focused on just grow because we can grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Well, so that's a big one.
Yeah.
So the other stuff about ChatGPT, and you can talk as much in different segments as you want, but I was talking to my niece also, and I'm a little bit of a futurist, not much, but the first thing when I really sat down, like with 4.0, it started, and it was like, okay. So our entire society, our entire education system, primary and secondary, is indexed for knowledge, retention, and recall.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
The whole system.
Yep.
Knowledge retention, knowledge recall.
Yep.
How many phone numbers do you remember?
Right.
None.
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
Yeah.
Well, neither is retention and recall.
Right.
When it's the back end of Bing, when you can just queue, or what's it called? Prompt.
Yeah.
If you can prompt it, it'll give you all the data and the information you ever wanted.
Right.
Right? Instantly.
Yeah, and it's with no fact checking or no,
Okay, ultimately you're gonna want to narrow it down.
But you can't, but I think that's where it gets, if it's pulling from trusted sources, and that's where we're all focused on.
Then you got the
trusted,
speech problems
quotes.
with that.
Yeah.
Right, sure, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but the big implication is, like, I talked to my 16-year-old about this, and your daughter's how old? 20?
Yep, 20.
We have a system that indexes for knowledge retention and recall, and it is going to be, in short order, absolutely useless.
I'll let you go. And then
that part of it.
Yes.
Okay. The problem solving, the creativity, the ability to think and be critical and analytical and apply solutions and whatever. That's what we should be indexing for, not knowledge retention or recall, in some sense.
Yep.
Okay. So whether it's by version, 5.8 or 7.2, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But I'm not going to need to know all that. Just the same way I don't need to know phone numbers.
I get the point.
Okay.
I get the point. What I think
I'm
is,
not saying absolutely. I'm just saying that.
What's one of my main concerns about text AI implementations. Two, it feeds off each other. So one, I guarantee, I don't know the ins and outs, but it's some kind of black box modeling. So we don't actually know how it's learning, right? Using neural nets, using some kind of reinforcement learning it's got the reinforcement learning component, like, hey, this isn't what I wanted, so you're giving it feedback. We cannot see what it's evaluating as true source, false source, this is smarter, this is not. We don't know how it's ultimately developing that way. And with every other tool that's been developed, and similarly,
we know the back end.
We haven't known the back ends of Tay, the Twitter bot, Microsoft's Twitter bot.
Oh, okay.
We haven't known when different companies, Amazon years ago with the here I'm name dropping companies, I'll get sued, right, when you publish all this, and I'll be like, find that guy.
I don't
find
think
that guy. Amazon with their, we're going to screen resumes, text usage. Apple, when they did some credit card tie-in and similar things, right? All of these that have used some kind of black box AI behind them have all developed bias and prejudice, every single one of them.
Okay.
And so we know that this technology that's in ChatGPT, that every other incarnation of it ever has had bias and prejudice show up.
Okay.
And we've been able to see it visibly because those are not as sophisticated as ChatGPT. Okay. So it shows up quickly, it shows up visibly. We know that, hey, this is what's going on.
Right.
I strongly believe, and will, until that ChatGPT is already learning its good biases and prejudices of whose words to use, who's better sources, who's this, and no one's evaluating that, right? No one's checking that to see.
Right.
Who are the
it's like an unmanaged graduate student.
Yes. Right.
And then you're going to go to press with it.
Yep. Right.
What?
Yeah. and you don't know any of its sources, and you're never going to know any of his sources for all this information he's spitting.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just learning the stuff that gets good press, right? Like what gets good feedback.
You said sorry.
Yeah, right. Woo! You got to be careful.
No.
Yeah. But yeah,
without citations,
Yes.
without sourcing.
Right. And it's getting feedback, right? It needs feedback to become better.
Sure.
To be more efficient.
But even
in its
that's
job.
biased.
Right. The feedback's
By the
biased
people.
by the people who are giving it feedback. So all these things are happening simultaneously that no one cares.
Right.
No one cares that we're asking these questions and then giving it feedback, and what's that doing long term?
Right. It'll be the lead in the gas.
Yeah.
At some point.
Right. And,
Okay.
With no purpose other than to be a toy that now can. We also know that you're doing this on YouTube, and we know that it's reading YouTube transcriptions, and there's malicious code being the equivalent of like malicious code being written into that for ChatGPT. And
Right.
There's already issues of popping up.
And then also, let me just say, in the competitive industrial sense, what's to stop people from feeding it malicious things?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying other competitors or whatever. How do you screen and know any of this stuff? So ultimately, though, isn't it going to come back onto us, the data consumer?
Well, that's where I go back to when your knowledge retention, knowledge recall. Right. At some point, I think it comes up not just the consumer, but also to go back to being good. And when I was taught how to do a research paper, to go find a primary source. Wikipedia is not a primary source. ChatGPT and Wikipedia, seeing that correlation, and to be able to go back and we're going to have to take some ownership of when we as people it's a toy. Like, great, use ChatGPT as a toy.
A toy,
If you want to go out there and actually write a legal paper,
right,
legal argument, hopefully you're writing the legal argument yourself, not letting ChatGPT do it based off its already at this moment formed biases and prejudices.
Yeah. Okay, fine, but I don't see people doing that. Let's say research law firms or whatever.
Right.
Stop hiring.
Yeah.
They're just going to use it because it's there.
I don't disagree. But you're asking me what's the best option?
No, of course, sure.
Right.
We've got real world, how it's going to work, whatever, and then what's the worst outcome stuff, what's the best option stuff, all that, right? So I mean, but together, we're just watching,
right? But
I mean, some of us.
The equivalent of there's a lot of that. This is saying this from a neutral standpoint of a lot of buy American.
Yeah.
Rhetoric out there, right? Okay. Buy American. And you look at the same people who preaching buy American, and they're buying not American products. Why? Because they're cheaper.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, sure.
And so at some point you have to align with your values. If you want what you say you want, right? If you want to buy American, then buy American. And if you're not, then you're working against this. And if you want good, unbiased, unprejudiced, legitimate legal
data
papers,
stuff.
Data stuff, then you're going to have to not buy GPT, right? You're going to have to put the work in, spend more money, and but we are so capitalist that I don't know how that's going to work.
Right. And so we're at the crossroads with all this stuff, whether we know it or not, right?
Right.
It's happening now.
Yeah, and I would say, I think we were at the crossroads 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
And we crossed them and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Like we made our decision and didn't, and now, because you can't stop it now, like the decision has already been made. We're already on a path that can't be.
Right.
We can't wake up tomorrow and
put the toothpaste back in the tube.
No. Right. Yeah. It was made 2 or 3 years ago when we knew. I'm not a Lex Friedman fan personally. But
I think he's a good guy.
I think he's I don't. That's why I think he's a. I mean, he's educated. I'm not a fanboy. I'm not a pro.
Right, okay,
but when he was talking about ChatGPT,
a couple years
ago, no one cared. And he was talking about where ChatGPT was going.
Right.
No one cared.
Right.
We had a chance then. Even then, he was talking with people, and there was a conversation around, hey, before 4.0 comes
There's
out.
There's been yearly conversations.
Yes.
Right?
And so we've avoided that. That now we're beyond that point. I don't. The crossroads has happened. We just didn't care. We didn't aware.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot like, so they judge historic time, right? It used to be before Christ, after Christ, and it was before current era, after current era.
Yeah.
Well, the current era is the time when we exploded nuclear weapons. It changed
Yep.
atomic atmosphere
Right.
on the planet.
Yep.
So that's the marker.
Yep.
So, but this is speaking of the crossroads.
Right.
It's like, well, did you know you were delineating this?
Yeah.
Is a point you couldn't transgress before or after.
Right.
But you had already transgressed it.
Yeah.
You had already crossed the threshold.
Right. And we've crossed a number of thresholds that you can't uncross. And then and I always still, I think every time I go to the airport, I get to fly a decent amount and joke about when I'm at a commercial airport about, my daughter Abby, who's 20, will never understand the threshold, right? Like when we cross this threshold,
Like pre 9/11,
right?
The screening,
yeah, right. The screening and the
shoes and everything,
right? And the how it was like everybody loved going to the airport. Your friend was coming home. We'd go to the terminal to meet him, and there was.
Now it's like you're a smuggler,
right? Now you're a smuggler, and I don't talk to anyone anymore that says I love going to the airport. The airport's a pleasant experience, and it used to be. Like, hey, we're going to so-and-so's coming home.
It was an event.
It was an event. We're going to go to the airport and meet them. And it was, so we crest these thresholds and we don't think about, like you said, it's kind of a futurist, but, we need people thinking about in those fields, like, what does this, like, what's the real implication of this, right?
Yeah, implications of
the implementation, right? Yeah.
That always happens on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you for my first one.
Oh, that's all right.
First of many. Huh?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that's all interesting stuff. And so for people who don't know, so like your metadata, I'm going to call it analysis, but I want to use the word manipulation. Like, because it's both. I mean, it's everything. We're taking something. What's the comparison to metadata? IT. What's the other comparison? Would it be like overseeing a stock exchange where you've got so many things going on?
I don't know the comparison. When I think about that with data in general of right here we've got 2 water cups with 2 straws, right? So that's a data point. How many water cups? 2. How many straws? 2. Right. How many water cups?
You're dumbing this down for us.
So two straws, straws in the water cups, right?
Uh-huh.
So right there we've got multiple ways to record the exact same thing, and then you start to branch out, and you think about how much of this do I want to record, and then how much do I want to record? How much, how can I efficiently do that? And then after I do that, then you think about what can I do with that to make new features, a new one. So if there's 2 water cups, 2 people, then you make a new one that water cups per person, there's 1, right?
Right.
And so then you start to even make things that aren't there.
Oh,
this
is starting to hurt.
Yes. So then you start to get, and literally some of the stuff I work with is thousands of features, right? You start off with, let's say a couple hundred, and next thing you know, at 500
base data, and then you're extracting features,
right? Yeah,
which is what, to tell a story,
right.
To have useful tools.
Yeah. So I always, data is the best representation of the real world that we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to tell you a story, I'm going to tell you by data points. Who was there, what they were wearing, all those are data points.
Right. Facts.
And so it's as close as we can get to what the temperature is. And so the point is to tell the story, right? Or it's inherently what information do I need to tell a story? What story do I want to tell? That's where the manipulation comes in. So if I have a story I want to tell a lot of times.
Right.
When I'm doing different things, I'll disclose, here's my biases.
Yeah. And this is it. I mean, in the simplest sense, is it nothing more than the old damn statistics thing? It's just on such a more grand scale.
I think it's similar to that. I think the damn statistics was people really, people would throw out, this is where the middleman somewhere will throw out a statistic that without context.
Okay.
And so when you've got a statistic of 1 water cup per person, well, if there's only, that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean 1 person, 2 people, 100 people.
Okay.
no, it like, what does that statistic mean?
Right.
And so that's the thing where the damn statistics come in. We go
It's like, well, wait a second. Did we have a shortage of cups? Did we have an excess of cups? Yeah. Was there not enough water? Was there too much water?
Right.
What are you trying to say?
Right. And so
thing.
Right. So we throw out these statistics with no story behind them.
Right.
And
or like a disingenuous representation of stuff. Right.
I mean, we'll throw out, murder rates by race things, and then we don't talk about the context of
or the collection numbers or whatever.
Right. Yeah. What the actual population is versus, well, of course you would expect this to happen because that's just fits the numbers.
But, yeah. Well, and people, I guess people are wise enough, but when you talk about rates, you're talking about a percentage of a given population, a select given set of numbers, right? Which is doesn't reflect hard numbers within another context.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so this is where I think people are, well, obviously people don't have enough time to just parse through all the shit that people just spew out.
Yeah. And that's
most of the time.
100%. Yeah. I don't know any, like myself even, I get caught into looking up things and I can only fact check so much. Right.
Yeah.
And
I'll hear something and I'll be like, you sneaky son of a bitch.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's just there.
Right.
And it allows you to say this.
Yep.
And it doesn't represent the thing.
Right. And that's where, so I'm, like I said, got to formally train. I'll give a plug here, Notre Dame.
Yeah, go ahead.
And because and Notre Dame, I'm impressed by their ethics. Like that's one thing. I went there really with a certain mindset of, this is going to be some Catholic goody-goody, what's this going to be?
Right.
And as I got involved, I was just floored by the amount of ethical conversations we have in training.
Right.
And, it was fantastic to become a trained data scientist, where a lot of these statistics, a lot of what's happening nowadays is being done by some guy that watched some YouTube videos and knows how to plug in numbers into a few lines of code, right? And then he makes this model and tells this thing, and he has actually no idea how it's working, doesn't understand the actual math, doesn't understand the ethics behind it.
Or the collection of the data. Right. So I'm saying that. Let's take like a sociological study.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
It's like he might not know. He doesn't know those screening questions. He doesn't know how the participants were selected.
Right.
He may not know all the back story that the scientists that did the thing would know. Right.
Yeah. Where I work, we had a company present us some data from some survey data. Mm-hmm. And I started right away, like, before I look at your survey data, how are the survey participants chosen? Right. There it goes again, right? How are the participants chosen?
Right.
Is there some kind of reward system for the participants completing it?
Right.
What's the click-through time? Is this, if it was an online, so like, what's the click-through time?
Sensitive? Was it IQ sensitive? What are we even looking at?
Yeah, and is it, hey, click this, do this survey, get a $5 Amazon gift card. Well, I'm gonna hit 33333, whatever it is.
Yeah, just give you random answers.
Give me random answers. And so I need context of the survey before I even care about your results.
Right.
And for this particular one, it was difficult getting through that. Mm-hmm. They just want to, people just want to present, here's my results.
Or that's all they were given by their people.
Right.
But go out and sell this.
Right. But no one's ever actually asked the question of.
Yeah. So underlying all of this stuff, like, the onus is on the people to really don't just this is so cliche stuff. Don't believe everything you see, read, hear, whatever. Yep. Dig into it. And this is not everybody's their own researcher thing.
No.
But read the thing, pull up the paper, right?
Right. And I think support people who have ethics. Like there's as somebody out there that has no training, right, that's doing their own research, they're going to miss parts of it. Because
you're talking about me and my book?
We'll talk about your book.
Oh, but no, we don't have to.
Okay.
But, no, go ahead. Sorry,
saying more of the election, the Trump-Clinton election and
poll
the
results,
poll results,
whatever.
Well, no, they weren't wrong, because when you look at them,
yeah,
they were Right, just the margin of error happened to swing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, and so
nobody references those margin of error.
no one
afterwards.
No one looks at it and goes, "Hey, you know what? If the entire margin of error swings,
yeah,
this is that's
an 8-point jump,
right,
from the low to the high,
right, and it goes to the other candidate. So you've actually, that 4-point swing is 4 points less here, 4 points more there, overtake like this, and we know that that's called the 90 margin of error for a reason.
Yeah, and so also for the everyday person, like all that math you learned, like this is where you're supposed to use it.
Right.
The thought that, well, I don't need to know that. No, you do.
You do.
This is why. Here's how.
Yeah. So
that's funny.
So if you didn't learn or didn't retain it, I still go, that's okay, but that's where we need trusted data voices that somebody supports, and don't retweet the dumbass thing. Right. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not
the flashy headline.
Yeah, don't do it. Just don't. Because
yeah.
Especially if you don't understand, if it's just a flashy headline, and I go, no matter where you are on any political or social justice spectrum, don't
just retweet.
Don't just retweet. Don't just repost. Whatever instead, support voices that are. And I don't, even if they disagree with what I view my biases, right? If you're putting out some COVID number, don't just don't do your own research, and don't just repost somebody's anecdote. Don't repost somebody's,
Yeah. 3 out of my 30 friends.
Yeah, anecdotes are.
It's not a good sample.
I was talking to somebody recently about anecdotes. Don't. That's the hardest part about my job to explain to people, is anecdotes matter nothing to me, because when I'm talking about a sample size of 4 million,
right,
that one anecdote, no matter what it is, really doesn't influence the.
Yeah. And then that's so there's a disconnect there. Population studies.
Yes.
They don't necessarily translate into individual.
Right.
Like you're saying, anecdotal.
Yeah.
Application. But here's my pushback on that is, so you could say, as I'm living my life, all that data is completely irrelevant to me. You could say that.
Yes.
But so here's the middle ground.
Yep.
Is I think we're looking for an anecdotal application for me from the data studies.
Right.
And so that's where it manifests.
Yeah, and that's a disconnect, right? Because
anecdotes don't mean anything, but I'm looking for an anecdotal first-person application of a large data set.
Right.
So,
and we're looking at.
But together, anecdotal stuff makes data.
Right.
So.
Right, but the chances of, So I look at it.
So clear this up for us.
All right. So you've got descriptive, predictive, prescriptive. So 3 ways to use the data. So descriptive, hey, this is what's going on right here, right? Predictive, here's what I think's going to happen.
Right.
And prescriptive, so I want to make this happen. Influence decision making somehow using data.
Okay.
So I think we're trying to use descriptive data, right? Here's what's going on,
right?
And use it to predict something about my life.
Okay, and so there's a huge difference there too.
Right. Okay. So because this many people driving my car have this happen, have had this happen historically. I'm going to have that happen to me.
Right. Okay.
And it's just. We don't have the right data points to make that prediction,
right?
To kind of understand what's coming for me,
right? And so, because all things follow that random random variability thing, right?
Yeah, and we don't know if I've got to drive a Volkswagen, so if all these 87% of Volkswagens have this happen, and so I'm thinking, then I say to my friend, so there's an 87% chance of that happening to me, because I drive a Volkswagen.
Right.
Whereas I don't realize that, no, it's because this kind of tire they put on those 87% of Volkswagens, that I don't have that tire, so I've actually got that's what's causing it. So my actual personal statistical chance of if I was doing a predictive model is 0.
Right.
Or next to 0, right?
Right.
But the data points aren't connected to the we don't know
exact cause.
Right. So we're using descriptive. Great. That's a descriptive data point.
Yeah.
When I switch at work, especially to predictive, that's where I have to start throwing in all these data points, because I don't even realize that out of the hundreds and thousands, I find some interesting things that I think, well, how does that influence if somebody's going to buy this product? How does that influence? Like, I didn't even it would never even would have been on my radar.
Right.
And I'm trying to find it among something else. So, yeah, the jump from descriptive to predictive is where I think we look at descriptive things. COVID, I'll use that because that's recent, that divided people that were everybody had their own statistics. Mm-hmm. Well, you're using descriptive statistics then to predict what's going to happen to me.
Right.
On whether it's I think I'm going to be okay or I think I'm going to die, right? Whatever it is. How about you look at a study of somebody who actually said this is what we predict, and somebody that we respect, and go with that, not just pull out statistics that are descriptive to support your point.
All right.
Of something, because if that happened, you don't have a timestamp on that statistic. You don't have the other variables that are influencing that statistic.
Right.
We know
the
that
selection bias, whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So that's
or survivor bias.
Yep.
And all these biases.
Yep.
It's hard to think. It becomes increasingly hard to think.
Yeah.
And thankfully, though, we're actually we're getting to identify all these different biases, right?
Yes.
But it's almost, you reach a point where with paralysis by analysis, individually, it's like, I can't look at that. Yeah. Like you're saying, just maybe trusted sources, things like this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
With the biases, too, I think that's where we're a culture that none of us want to be biased, right? That's kind of become this new, I'm not biased, you're not biased, we're all not biased, we've just got the facts, right? That's the short version.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Okay.
That we're so not okay with being biased that we need our facts to be the right ones. We need this to be the right. We need that to be right.
Yeah.
One of the valuable things that I love is when I've taken things like an implicit bias test and be able to identify that, no, I am a biased individual. When I said earlier, when I go to make a presentation,
right,
first slide of a new audience, here are if it's pertinent to this presentation,
start with them.
Here's my biases that are pertinent to this discussion. Here's some things you should know about me that are going to skew what you're about ready to hear.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's okay. So even philosophically, though, or sociologically and in our own lives, like it would be great if we all just started with, I'm biased.
Yes. Yep.
Here's the ones I've identified.
Right.
What other ones should I consider?
Right. Here's the ones that would be problematic in this situation.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, that seems like a good way to go. I mean, and again, I think in our circles, I mean, I'm trying to weed out biases.
Right.
In particular, and again, not really. I want to shift to you, personal, spiritual, whatever. But in my, like at the early stages of my book stuff, I was doing this research, 6 weeks of it. I was digesting it, and I was like, so what I found within the first couple of years is the intensity of my thinking in the research and the whatever changed the way I thought.
Yes.
I mean, it affected me in a lot of different ways.
Right.
And one of the most interesting or even glaring ones was that I would read something or it would present a conclusion. I did this to Patty too. Mm-hmm. I was looking at an image and there was a certain, is it this? Could it be that?
Yeah.
Right? Some impression of an image. Uh-huh. She came up to look at it. I closed the computer.
Yeah.
Because I didn't need any other input to skew what the thought was.
Right.
Well, so that's like a change in thinking. The other this first version of it was Did I or didn't I lock the front door?
Yeah.
Simple, right? Everyday life, of course I locked it. Just keep going.
Right.
I would have to check it, not an OCD thing, but I didn't trust my brain of what I knew to be factual, accurate, and real. I was like, are you sure?
Right.
Are you sure? Wait, you just read this. Are you sure? Wait, you're suggesting this or interpreting it this way.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Why are you sure? Yeah. How are you sure? Yeah. Right? It changed all the parameters of what I would say, oh, this is likely, or this appears, or this seems this way. It's just call it ambiguous. It wasn't like intentionally ambiguous.
Right.
Because there's some cost to getting it wrong. Right. It was, well, there is, but it was, I want to leave things open in the margin for not only me to change my mind, but to interpret something, make room for everyone else's interpretation, because there's going to be lots of different things, right?
Right.
And then how best to even present that for myself and for other people through the writing or whatever. And so this is all super tricky. I mean, you could just say, oh, it's just, just follow the scientific process and go through peer review. Okay.
No.
That covers it.
Yeah.
It covers it. But like, what does that mean? What are all the details into that?
So on the data science side world, this is so paired with ethics. One of the other things Notre Dame stressed and I took a lot of interest in is storytelling, right? That's it. The data itself is just the data. Like, how am I going to use it ethically? How am I going to tell a story? And I've been laughing about people that can't admit they're wrong, where I saw Lauren Boebert tweeted about CNN's, since Title 42's over, she talked about here's the surge and people coming across the border, because she misread the graphic.
Oh.
But the graphic was also a poorly represented
data set.
The way the data was laid out with the days of the week was the exact opposite of what would be kind of your instinctual, oh, this is how Monday through Friday should be laid out.
Oh, okay.
So it was laid out backwards, going up and down. And so it's kind of like when you see it, you think what she thought.
Right.
When you read it, you're like, oh, you think the other thing, like, oh, things have gone down. But that's the similar of when I'm presenting data. Not only am I presenting the data, what happened as people are crossing the border, but how do I shape your perception of what you're receiving? And so once I know that I can do that, that goes on that prescriptive side of data usage. When we have Cambridge Analytica, right, shaping elections, right, when we know that
and where are those guys now?
Right, millionaires somewhere.
They're somewhere.
Yeah, millionaires somewhere. So we know that we can use data to shape your perception, and the whole world is just data. The door's locked as a data point, right? Is the door locked or unlocked? Binary question.
Right.
Yes, that when there comes a point when you realize that, if you can accept, if I can accept that I have biases, I can also accept that I have perception, right? That I have a perception.
Yeah, and there's no doubt liability in double checking yourself. Right. It's just the smart thing to do.
Right.
Ethical thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. Especially even before you present the story.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, and I mean, this is obviously most ethical, forthright people are trying to do this and not intentionally lie, this and that, whatever the case might be. But like, I'm looking at my research folders, 5,000 documents, images, and all this stuff, and I'm right here putting together a book and whatever. And there's all these different people over the last couple hundred years have studied the topic, whatever. I don't want to misrepresent anything that anybody has concluded. I don't want to misrepresent even a little bit the evidence. I don't want to misrepresent anything.
But you're gonna. Like, so I think.
So you're saying implicit bias, even in asking the question, there's a bias that goes with it.
Right. Yes. And then when I start to give you data, right, when you talk about how high something is,
okay,
you're giving a reference point. Is that reference point sea level? Is that reference point ground?
Yeah, of course. Sure.
So
Are you taking me to task here?
I'm saying we all do it, but then that's why I think it's so valuable that we can recognize and admit biases, right? This is the question I asked for your book, right? This is the question I asked. This is the findings.
Oh, right.
So these are my biases. This when I present the data, it might. So when I present the height of something, it might, whether it's based off of sea level or ground level or this level, is going to be.
Sure. I do itemize sea level. Anyway.
Okay.
I'm saying I do.
Right, but something that's when you hear 500 feet from, I'm just making up numbers here. I don't know the actual, but I'm saying when I hear 500, even the context, right? If I hear 500 feet above sea level,
right,
100 yards above ground level,
right,
or a mile above the nearest bush, like even the units of measurement,
right,
and the values all have a different feel.
Yeah, like when I say 1,000,000 pesos,
yes,
it's like, what the fuck is that?
Right.
What's the value?
Right.
Compared to what?
Yes.
Right. Or Bitcoin value, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
I get it.
Yeah. And the reference point, yes. Yeah.
And so okay, so this is the scrutiny, right?
Yes.
So we got to scrutinize not only the evidence itself, but then the thinking behind the evidence,
yes,
or telling the story,
right,
or asking the question, or whatever, and also even let's say variables, because let's take my thing. It's just like one person asking one question.
Yeah.
Like, there's stuff I'm overlooking.
Yes.
There's stuff I haven't taken into account. Right. So how much of that do you do?
Yeah.
And I guess in any sense, right, it's like the willingness to be wrong or admit that you're wrong and make corrections.
Right.
But still, though, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, it seems like it might be.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do something perfect with no error whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, but that's kind of a fool's journey anyway, right? But it's like, do the best you can, scrutinize all this stuff, put it forward, and then admit where you're wrong.
Yeah, get feedback.
Get feedback, submit the academic papers, see what they say, whatever.
Yeah.
And anyway, just for clarity, my base question is, has the plateau always been a plateau? That's the base question.
Right.
I don't see that there could be a bias in there. The next thing was the investigation into where is demonstrated human alteration, which we can identify versus, say, a natural alteration.
Yes.
Okay? Are you with me here?
I'm with you.
Just go. No.
I'm just listening. Yes.
Okay,
I'm in my mind, though. I'm
go
building
ahead.
up. Yeah.
Throw out scrutiny. Okay, so that's part two.
See, can I interrupt
Go.
now? So this is where when I listen to people, this is where I like to think about, so the agreed upon phrases, right? Like you said, demonstrated
human alteration.
Human alteration. And so already I'm thinking, so there's a measurement and criteria that I'm sure you're familiar with in your research, right? That distinguishes human versus natural.
Yeah, sure.
So
yeah.
So if in 50 years, I always think, like, where is your argument based, right? Like, what is the actual foundational truth that you have to have this conclusion? And so if that's one of the foundational truths, is if in 50 years something that was demonstrable human,
right,
now we know it is ambiguous or demonstrable natural,
right,
does your whole argument crumble? That's what I'm thinking. That's what's going through my head is, okay, like, what's the foundational truths to this?
But I'm saying stuff that is currently, let's say currently identifiable as human, clearly and obviously human alteration.
Right. You go on. I'm just thinking this is where my brain goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But, and then also,
which is,
it's fine, but like literal paralysis by the words.
Yeah.
I mean, that's possible.
No. Yeah.
So at some point you just gotta. Okay.
No, I think make the argument. Just realize that what are my foundational components needed.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
All right.
I get it.
Yes.
So then also, even in this case, there's a whole appendix of further research. Is there more identifiable human alteration, tool mark, things like this, whatever? I don't know.
Yeah.
If there's novel discovery to be had, other than what I already present. So that's further research. It's like, right now can't come to conclusion. Oh, have we identified all the human alterations? I don't know.
Right.
So there's more to do. Okay, so that's number one question. Now, do you see the question as having a prejudice?
The plateau part,
Yeah.
or the
Has the plateau always been a plateau? It's just a curious inquiry.
So it's a binary question, right? Like it's either yes or no. So you've got the plateau versus all other possibilities.
Right. Greater masses.
Right. But I'm saying,
And then a range of what that might
Right.
be as well. So there's many,
Yeah,
It's
okay.
either roughly representing the current mass
Yeah.
or some greater mass.
Right.
Those are the two options, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, and then so clearly identifiable present evidence of human alteration. Okay.
Okay.
This is fine.
Yeah.
No, this is fine.
Yeah.
And then, so if there is that, where this bedrock crest is available at the Giza Plateau, this human alteration indicates a necessary greater mass. It just has to.
Right. Something was removed.
Something was removed. And so the evidence of human alteration or some removal of material doesn't give any indication as to how much material was removed. Right? So in that, there's two or three. Well, there's two. There's two ways which you could clearly identify the amount of mass removed. Some before and after imagery.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
Or an exact, sworn cataloging of mass removed. Those would be the only, from a trusted source,
Right,
let's say.
right, yep.
So those would be the two ways to do it. Like, for example, you look at a before and after of Mount Rushmore, which was 6 grandfathers
Yep.
by the Sioux, right? Well, the visual evidence shows the transformation, right? Or Michelangelo's David. I don't know if there's a picture. I think there might be a drawing of the rock before the sculpture.
Okay.
Before and after.
Yeah.
There's your only way to prove it.
Right.
Other than a catalog of stones removed.
Yep.
Those are the only two ways. So if you have, there's a third way, geologically speaking. So we have a plateau. We have the question, an inquiry about the rise of the plateau and the beginning mass, let's say. Then we've got an examination. Is there present identifiable human alteration, obvious or not obvious, or however unambiguous, with further research, okay? And then, see, this is hard to even think through, for Christ's sake, right? No, I'm saying, just to make sure, have I crossed the I's? Have I dotted the T's? What the fuck are you talking about? Right? Right?
Right.
Okay. So
I whiteboard a lot. Yeah.
yeah. And so even in this process, you don't know all the details, but I mean, I probably have 1,500 pages of my journaling that has just vomit of every single thing daily for the last 12, 13 years.
Right.
Okay, so this is how those guys go crazy. Okay, I'm not. I mean, I've stayed relatively sane so far.
Right.
So anyway, okay. So human alteration. How would you begin to identify a range estimate of this greater mass?
Right.
How might you do it without exacting imagery, without an exact catalog of stones removed? Well, you could guess, you could say the minimum necessary, right? You could say minimum necessary conservative estimate, right? If you've got a quarry here, let's say, and the surrounding bedrock is at the level A, you could just assume, that the level of the quarry was at once level A.
Right.
But that leaves out a whole bunch of other conclusions as a possibility, right?
Yep.
So you're estimating a minimum conservative mass, okay? That's what we've been doing. is like, well, it looks like this, or it looks like that. Here's you take the two demonstrated highest elevations, and you just assume that though that was the highest potential elevation of the bedrock,
right?
Which is what we've done for example A, example B.
Right.
Those are this is it.
Yep.
Well, that is short-sighted. That leaves out the possibility of any other more liberal beginning assumption, right? Well, so that's one error in what we've been doing. So the next error, or excuse me, the next potential, let's say, or the way in which we might establish a range of what the rise could be was absolutely greater than what is demonstrated where it shows human alteration.
Yep.
Absolutely greater. So between that and some infinite number above that, how do you come to some estimation of the range of rise? And in the case of the Giza Plateau, it's called the Macadam Formation. It's this Middle Eocene sedimentary limestone. I want to say 8.5 million years old. I don't think it's billion. I think it's million. Which is neither here nor there. Check that. So the Giza Plateau is on the western bank of the Nile Valley. Okay? Now, before the Aswan Dam, that Nile floodplain was of varied amount annually. Okay? Once they build the Aswan Dam, the Nile is constricted to these various tributary branches, let's say. Okay? But if you back up, Pleistocene erosion, this Macadam Formation was bisected east and west by the Nile, right through it. Okay? So at Giza, the Macadam Formation is roughly 200 feet. It varies. There's a lot of variation, but on average, estimate.
Yep.
About 200 feet. There's the Nile blown through the Macadam Formation. It seems reasonable that in order to establish a range rise at Giza, you might look at the existing Macadam Formation within the local geography. Same formation, east and west of the Nile, bisected by the Nile. Okay? So this formation, the Macadam Formation, Middle Eocene sedimentary limestone, demonstrates 200 feet here. On the eastern part of the Nile at Macadam Hills, it demonstrates a vertical rise of 715 feet above sea level. Okay? So when I came to that and looked at it, it's like, wait, this is the evidence of the potential rise of the Macadam Formation.
Right.
715 feet, there it is, right there. 8.4 miles east of Giza. Okay? So now I'm confronted with either the question or the apparent conclusion. Giza looks like it might be missing 500 feet of limestone.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So how crazy is that? Well, at its face value, it's like, wait, time out. That's a crazy idea. But I get there from the question, from the human alteration, from the question of the potential rise, to an examination of the demonstrated local geology of the once contiguous or even presently contiguous. See, underneath the Nile silting, it still may be completely contiguous. Okay? That Giza may, this is the story, right, may have had a potential rise up to its demonstrated rise.
Yep.
That's my base assumption. Okay? Does that sound clear?
Sounds clear, yeah.
Okay. Well, then we agree.
It sounds clear on your base assumption, yes. It sounds clear on where you're, yes. And then I would get to all kinds of, like, and I'm sure you've addressed them. I just like questions. I can see all the questions popping in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when you're talking about the limestone and I would be curious as you go down both sides of the Nile, what the different geological
strata layers.
Yes, what
okay.
they look like and how they match up, and
yeah.
then if that reinforces
if they match up.
If they match up,
right?
If they don't,
that's
like,
what it's in there. It's a question.
I figured you would.
And there's, of course, yeah. Well, I mean, there's probably things I haven't asked, but further research. So what? So
because then what if this is all matching on the way up, right? And if it is, then that gives something, and if it doesn't, then this gives another story. But there's a story in there. There's a story either way.
Yeah.
And that doesn't.
So you take a strata core samples at Giza. You take strata core samples at Macadam Hills.
Yes.
See if there's identifiable sister layers.
Right.
And if we stop here at member 3, and here there's member 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15.
Right.
The evidence would infer that 4 through 15 is absent.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Now take that one step further. Again, further research. It's like, where's all that limestone?
Right.
I mean, it's a lot of limestone.
Right.
Great question. Let's go find some.
Yep.
Okay, because we're going to check it against the known strata.
Right.
And see if it's the same.
Yep.
So anywhere there's an orphaned sedimentary limestone used in any building anywhere, wherever it's discovered, if we don't know what its parent formation is, you can check it against Macadam limestone.
Right. Yep.
So this would be predictive research.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of that.
Yep. And then I would think about like travel distances. What would like you start to think about, what am I going up your alley? Is that what you're saying?
No. Just travel distance invokes a prejudice that you couldn't just ship it around the globe.
No, I think you can. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, how does that look?
Let's start checking any orphan
and the restriction, I don't mean like there's a boundary, not travel boundary, but restrictions. If I'm a ship in a time period across the world, X many metric tons of limestone, what does that logistically look like, and what comes out of that?
That leads its own conclusions.
Right.
So many.
And
so
like
every little nugget in my work has its own set of other conclusions.
Well,
for example, let's just say the plateau base assumption as a visual illusion, right? What is that? What has that simple, our inability to maybe see or induce a greater beginning mass? What is the outcome of that? It's however many thousands of years of complete ignorance of what that beginning mass looked like.
Right.
Okay. About which we've written 1,000 books on the study of everything on the Giza Plateau.
Yep.
Which is all subject to this base assumption, which seems to be illusory. Well, set all that aside.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's its own volume. I spend no time on that.
Yeah.
So anyway, like you're saying. So now, if it began as this butte instead of the plateau, or let's listen, any amount up to 715 feet.
Yep.
You could say, well, what if it was 400 feet?
Right.
What if it was 525? Okay, well, that has its own set of conclusions, if you will. But for my argument, I say, well, let's just consider the maximum rise. Okay, we can consider all these other options, right? But for this, let's consider the maximum rise. So then we can ask the single elusive question is, how might the pyramid... Now, this, again, though, hold on. Let me just walk you through this. Let me walk you through this. Yeah. So, barring the option, which people might say, we'll just take the butte down and then build the pyramids. You're building from the same plateau that we are now.
Yes.
Which leads you to zero.
Right.
Okay, so that's not an option. Okay, so then you can ask, how might the pyramids be built from, because we've identified the limestone material, core material, as being from the Macadam Formation. So how might the pyramids be built from and within this butte, obviously, and then take the butte down to the plateau that exists now? So that becomes the hypothetical question about the build and the various hypotheses which could arise out of that. Okay?
Yep.
And so this is the logic of it. So I am going to present my best educated, my best presentation of a hypothetical build, the means, the tools, the processes, the methods from and within the butte, okay? And the entire slate is open for anyone else to present their hypotheses of how it could have been done, right?
Right.
But the butte assumption itself produces the when conclusion, which changes a bunch of other stuff, irrespective of the how.
Yeah.
Okay? And so that's really all my work, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you see,
Yeah.
can you see errors in the thinking? Okay.
No, not errors. And I've heard, you've shared some of this with me before, so
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the concept. So
Okay.
It's not
It's not foreign. It's not foreign.
Right. It's not foreign concept, and it's not, I don't see like this fatal flaw.
Ridiculous.
This is the thing that makes it totally not just implausible but impossible.
Right. And that's the same answer I got. The chair of civil engineering at Wash U, Thomas Harmon. That's the same answer. He's like, well, I mean, I'm not fully convinced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We'd have to read the thing, but I don't see any fatal flaws in it.
Right.
From that at this point.
Yep.
So, which is fine. And then we can debate all day long about my interpretation of how the build would happen.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think whether like your interpretation of how the build would happen, what's the core truths that actually matter, right? That's probably not. That's not a core truth. That's a perspective and a important piece, right? But that's if portions of that are wrong, the core truth doesn't change.
True. So the butte beginning mass,
yes,
however the build happened, has no effect on that whatsoever.
Right.
Okay. So
yep.
Now that produces an absolute when.
Yes.
Have I told you this before?
You've told me it before, yes.
Which is for people, I haven't gotten into chapter 5,
right.
6 or 7 or 8 for the viewers, but let me just quickly run through this. So if the plateau, cemeteries, the western cemetery, the eastern cemetery, if the plateau began as a much greater mass, the butte, Mount Giza, you build the pyramids, the butte comes down to the plateau topography,
right.
Find the first tomb, the oldest tomb where the butte mass was. The project happened before that tomb could be there. Okay?
Yep.
That's the absolute when. So as we look, the Wadi cemeteries west of Giza, it's within and on the Macadam Formation, right? And it dates to, give or take, Reisner. This is Reisner, 1903, I think. Maybe it's 08. Check that. But Reisner does this excavation of the Wadi Cemetery. He attributes the tombs there to the second and third dynasty, okay? Partly because they were impacted by material from construction of fourth dynasty tombs. Mm-hmm. So therefore they predate the fourth dynasty build stuff. Okay, so give or take, let's say the oldest tomb is in the second dynasty. So this pyramid construction project and the removal of the butte mass down to the timely topography of the plateau, and I estimate a 400-year build, okay, and quarry. So the build happened 400 years before that tomb could be there.
Okay.
This is the absolute when.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Now, these other whens they have issues. There are issues with other dating.
Yeah.
And they put the chronology together.
Yeah.
Right. So this is an absolute when. It's covered in chapter 8. Okay.
Yeah.
So it takes it away from the fourth dynasty, away from the old kingdom. The pyramids were constructed, and the butte began to come down before 3150 BC. Okay.
Okay.
That places it in some sophisticated Stone Age culture. Okay.
Yeah.
So you look around. Tell me this sophisticated Stone Age cultures in the Nile before Egypt. And the answer is there aren't any.
Yeah.
Okay? So I don't care how far you go back. There's other indications about that. But find me one or create one.
Yeah.
Because they did this thing within the butte and took the butte to the plateau.
Yeah.
By this absolute tomb dating. Right? So that is the paramount shift, regardless of how the build happened.
Yeah.
Okay? So the build has no effect on that absolute when.
Yep.
So we have an absolute when novel, then we have to birth some understanding of this novel who. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it predates dynastic Egypt, right?
Yeah. I'm thinking about, and you have to, there's a definite why in there, right? Because at the
yeah.
Why are we putting this much effort before it's technologically?
There's two whys.
Yes. Yeah.
One why is, why are we quarrying this limestone?
Yes.
First of all, that's the natural resource that we're using to build.
Right.
It's like give or take 10 billion cubic feet.
Yeah.
Over 400 years.
And that goes into the shipping around and transportation around where you need to have a market. There's a lot of going on.
And wherever we're going to find that stone,
Yep.
and you can identify it and test it against existing macadam formation strata, you know absolutely that came from here.
Right.
Huh.
Yep.
So there's that. But the pre-existence of G1, G2, and G3, which are the three big pyramids, the pre-existence of those before dynastic Egypt introduces that the pyramids sitting there with whatever was in them, if anything, is a causal exposure for dynastic Egypt to evolve, okay, and develop. There's also no restriction on before 3150.
Yeah.
Is it 10,500 BC? Is it 36,000 BC? Okay.
Which would be helped by that tomb dating, and like there's some other things that gets
will
you
influence that. Sure.
Yep.
And so that's covered in the when chapter, chapter 8. Chapter 9 is like what is the who, right? And we can know the who by the demonstrated sophistication and the means and the tools demonstrated by the pyramids themselves.
Yep.
Okay. So that we can form a definition of the who, some sketch of the who, which is different than the Fourth Dynasty, different than the Old Kingdom technology, okay? Certainly not them. Mm-hmm. Well, then who would it be? And obviously they had these levels of sophistication as demonstrated by the pyramids. So, but their pre-existence, now we can ask the question of the what and the why, okay?
Yeah.
So some sophisticated prehistoric culture did this project, executed the project, and it appears that they put something in the pyramids because there's all these shafts and chambers, okay? And so then you can look at what was the dynastic actions and reactions to the pre-existing structures. And now you can form a picture of the what and the why, okay? So we can reinterpret the what and the why. And then that reinterpretation changes the causal root reality of civilization's birth in the Fertile Crescent, which leads us to today.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
That's where the whole story gets rewritten. Okay? Does that make sense? So, but again, back on what I think it seems sound reasoning, reasonable, right? And induction by evidence is a butte beginning instead of the plateau beginning.
Yep.
That's it. That's my whole thing. And it's taken 14 years and 600 pages. You would think it would be more simple to communicate.
Nothing with you simple.
What do you mean? What are you talking about? You're talking about me. What about you?
I know. That's right.
Data.
Oh, I don't.
Nothing, right?
Nothing simple.
So let's get to that. How did we get lampooned with these minds that just... How does that happen?
Yeah.
Is it just a function of IQ?
Right. I think, I thought about this a lot over my life.
Tell me what you think.
I mean, definitely some of it has to, there's a genetic portion, right? That just...
We didn't learn to be this critical.
Right.
Right. If we call it smart or whatever, or based on IQ or intelligence, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I'm not claiming myself to be brilliant.
Right.
You know, but there's a certain amount of thinking application that falls into some bell chart.
Right.
Somewhere.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that there's a dominant part in there that's genetic, just because talking. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad, my gramps,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's all there riddled through it.
But then there's the nurturing of it and in different ways.
Yeah.
The thing with it for me is, I was just talking about this the other day, of people, when I ask people, what are you thinking about? And they're like, oh, nothing, or whatever it is. I'm thinking, you're lying or you're simple. Like, I don't know which it is.
You're thinking, how long did Newton hold up to birth?
Right.
Calculus.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that, like, I'm always thinking, always this going on.
Right.
Like when you're saying, we were talking, I'm doing this evaluation, getting the picture, seeing the view, what's
Yeah.
going on, who's these people transporting. I've gotten comfortable with that. I think the complementary side has been, talking about this, you mentioned your spirituality, of just being able to get a spiritual side of meditation, some peace, some comfort, so that way
to balance this out.
Yeah.
The madness, call it madness, call it whatever.
Yeah. When you watch movies like Beautiful Mind and you relate, right? Then you're like, like I've got to do something about this, right? There's
get some yarn.
right. Yeah. Goodwill Hunting, and you're like, oh yeah, I get that.
Right.
Yeah, that you at some point, like, don't want to be a victim of it.
Right.
So make sure it's a tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, and meditation and spiritual practices has definitely been key for me.
Yeah. So you got to keep the whole balance. It's not a balance really.
Right.
It's just a baseline.
Yeah.
Right. Baseline of peace, serenity, contentment, whatever.
Yeah.
There's time and place for let the brain go and the thing, and you're in the thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know when I'm coming out of here. I guess I got to eat shit at some point.
Right. Yeah. People do. Yeah. And I'll go with obsession. You're talking about not being OCD, but just from a easy, phrasing standpoint, the obsession. Once the obsession kicks in and the hyperfixation kicks in, and I'm in that place. Yeah, like somebody probably should bring me food because
I'm not coming out.
I'm not coming out until whatever it is done. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And it's both great and beautiful.
Right.
But whatever. How would we know? It's like, well, how do you? I mean, this is the line from The Gambler.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
The Marky Mark.
Yep.
He's like, who and I? We already talked about this. Jeremy, maybe.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, the world is filled with plumbers. Most of them are happy.
Right.
Go do that.
Yeah. Yep.
I was just talking to Dave Z out here. He's a plumber, but that's my but I'll sit down to sew, and I can just be the upholstery guy.
Yeah. See, yeah. My issue is I don't, just from where my skill set is. My skill set doesn't lend itself to any kind of physical.
Right. Okay.
Like
but like when we're at yoga.
Right. Yoga. Yeah, I can be.
Here's an
hour. Right.
50 an hour.
Yeah, yoga, a little physical exercise.
Yeah.
When I'm out here smoking a cigar in the river, river, like there can be some. But yeah, once I get in the thing,
mania.
Yeah, then it's off to the races.
Right. And thank goodness for the mania.
Yeah.
Just John Nash himself, Game in Theory, and this, right? It's like, you wouldn't have got that from the guy who's not crazy.
Right. But on the way over here, I'm thinking about, I don't know why, but I'm just thinking on game theory. I was thinking about game theory things of the logical or illogical portion of, like, so if we know, I can. Go ahead.
Are you guys ready for this? Go ahead. No, really. Keep going.
It's kind of a simple concept, I think, but
okay.
It is. But it's just like, but then when you really start to think about it, it's not I can wager $1 to get $1,000, right? Mm-hmm. Or so let's say my odds are 100 to 1. So I've got good odds.
Yeah.
There's still a game theory portion of that of me not wagering, right? And then if my odds are 1 in a million to win $1,000 on my dollar, there's still a game theory portion of that's like, this is a logical thing to do.
So you're saying it's possible.
So I'm saying it's possible, right? So you're saying it's possible, and like, why would that? Like,
how does that change the decision?
Right. Like, how does it, like, knowing the odds, knowing the rewards, like when I'm evaluating, here's the rewards for here's my actions. Mm-hmm. There's some times when even an implausible reward is worth a risky action because that reward is so valuable to me.
Yeah.
And so, yes, this is where my brain goes. Once it starts to go on something like this, then I start to pull in all the like
variables.
Variables. How does this work? What's the,
decision making process?
Yeah. Like, and that's all it is, right? I'm just evaluating how do we make decisions and why.
Right. This is what Matt does in his spare time.
This is what I do while I'm driving. How do human beings make decisions, evaluating rewards versus chances of outcomes, and how those aren't always in equal proportion, and why we value, even when you're talking about something very concrete like $1 versus $1,000. So then you add something that's not as concrete, so this doesn't have as much tangible value.
Yeah, potential outcome of invest in my personal health by an hour of exercise.
Right.
What?
Oh my God, the rewards, and they're so in
the potentials,
and
all the
this.
variables.
Yeah, and then you have to really, yes, this I'm making an obvious sacrifice, a guaranteed sacrifice with these. I mean, it's, and the decision making. Then you start to think about people that do exercise and don't exercise, and how
can I apply the data to make a subjective personal choice?
Yeah, right. And then you start to watch other people's or my own biases, right? My own choices that are affected by my biases, and you can start to infer other people. This is how they're going to. This is their value systems. I mean, it really gets fascinating to me.
But sure. Yeah. Well, okay, yes, but also, and then there's random theory. It's like, well, you could do all that and still knock over the go game.
Right. Yes.
Or get hit by the bus.
Right.
Or whatever. It's like, shit.
Yeah.
So they don't secure an outcome.
No.
But it's just a probability.
Right.
Argument.
Probability.
Okay.
And then I love when people say, like somebody would walk by or talk to us afterwards, like, hey, what's the chances of you and Dave being on a podcast together? And I would say 100%.
Because it's happening.
Right. Right. Like at this point, it's 100%. But 6 months ago, a year ago, that you can assign a probability. That goes back to that predictive descriptive. Right now, it's 100% descriptive. We know what do you mean? There's zero chance it's not happening because it's already happened. Right. But then when we're predicting it, then it's a totally different describing versus predicting. But if we're going to predict something similar, right, we're going to use this anecdotal evidence to then predict something. That's why it's not a good application, because we were not taking into account all the factors that got me and you here.
Yeah, a year later.
Right. And we're just using that descriptive event, singular sole data point, to now predict something similar.
Right.
That in a year from now, there's going to be 2 water cups on the table. Right? Like something totally and people think that's a real prediction. Like, no, you're using a descriptive event for something predictive that's a singular, unrelated data point or loosely correlated. Yeah. So this is So the decision making is fascinating to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so are you still dating the same gal?
Yeah.
Tell us that story.
Oh,
no. Tell us that story.
So and this is a 100% chance story, right? This is one of those, now that's happened, it's 100%. But going in, what's the chances? Descriptively, it's 100%. So I was single for a little bit, and I'll give you the longer version of not real long, but so I was sitting on a Tuesday night smoking some cigars with some old guys playing dice, and I thought, this can't be my life. Like, I'm not ready for this yet. So
this is what it's come to.
This is what it's come to. So on a Thursday, 2 days later, I went to a mingle thing at the History Museum.
Right.
And was walking up, and this gal was walking up to the thing also, and somebody said to both of us, hey, go over there and hold a table. People are coming. Can you guys go over and just hold the table? I'm like, yeah, cool. So we went over and started talking. And true story, rap came on. She started rapping and laughing, and like then I fell in love. Moment. That was the moment. It was like this. Yeah. Like I was.
She knows how to have fun. She's not taking herself too serious.
Right. Yeah.
It's
again,
stars
align. So many things in that moment, right? What's decisions, right? She's making a decision to do, like, these are all human behavior is fascinating.
Right.
So we talked for a while, and spiritually, I was leaving, and I said, well, I'm not getting this gal's number. I'm just not.
Just leave it to the universe.
I'm going to leave it to the universe. I'm just, I don't even know if I want to date much right now. I was just playing dice 2 nights ago with old guys and just thought that's not my life.
In the alley.
Right. It was, So I left it to the universe, and 3 days later, I went to hike in Creve Coeur Park. Never had gone
Miles apart.
Miles apart.
Same metro area.
Yep.
Completely unrelated.
Completely unrelated. Never. I like to hike, but I'd never gone there before.
Uh-huh.
And get out of my car, and 15 feet in front of me is Jennifer, and I said, "Hey." And she.
How many days later was this?
3 days later. Yeah. Yep. So Thursday to a Sunday, and so I, at that point, said thanks, universe, and got her number, and
like, I got it from here.
right. Thanks for getting along.
The nudge.
Yeah. So I've told her this a couple times. I said, I'm so glad I didn't get your number at the History Museum, and I'm so glad that I did when I saw you at the park.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But you might have had the same outcome if you had gotten her number.
Right. That's what, and she said that too. I said, you might have been the same outcome, but it just feels different to me. It's like, I like when I can really look at a situation and say, yeah, I didn't force that. Right.
Yeah.
Like I absolutely let it happen naturally, and comfortably. And yeah, we've been doing great. Yeah. It's
serendipity.
Yeah, very serendipity. It's all along. I mean, everything just works out really well.
And is that how you? And again, you can tune in on the spiritual aspect, which we try to do.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how do I? So we've got, we've got the luminous, the transcendental.
Yeah.
We're not measuring it scientifically.
Right.
It's not a data thing.
Yep.
Right. It's real in that it happens, but it's like can't put a scale to it. Right. And this goes for work ethic or love for a dog or love for a friend or whatever. But then on the broader sense, it's like there's this energy. It's whatever. It's vibration. It's the universe.
Yeah, and I think
I used this one the other day. It's like we're breathing oxygen that was in Newton.
The 7 or whatever it is molecules. Yeah,
whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's like 7. Yeah. Yep.
So
part 4 to 7, somewhere in that range.
Part of them is now a part of me.
Yes.
What? What's the deal?
Yeah.
Like depending on what you had for lunch.
Yeah.
Like the second I eat a piece of chicken or lettuce, right? Or eat an orange, I'm now part orange tree.
Right.
Or lettuce or chicken.
Yeah.
It's all become human.
Right.
And it's the same thing.
Yep.
Well, that flies against separation. If it's opposite of I'm all alone. I'm not connected.
Well, and I think I will definitely disagree with you from the way I see it. Of data does play a role, and to me, it's just not quantitative. It's qualitative. This is what I'm.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, but qualitatively, right? Like that, I can find evidence to say this data point.
Yeah, you just can't quantify it.
You can't quantify it.
Okay, right.
But
there's all subjective interface.
Yes,
that's the important part.
Yep, and it takes. I say often, you're not going to see it very often sitting at home watching Netflix, right? Like. You have to get out in the world and be connected to experience the connections. There has to be some moving feet.
Yeah, other people, activities, events, interests, whatever.
Right.
It's not just. But if you watch Netflix and then 2 days later somebody's like, "Oh, wow, I had this experience watching this thing." You now there's a connection based on the thing that maybe you watched. Right. So I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, but that's solely you're not going to. But there's connection with people. People
there's
are
plenty
involved.
more things. Not by yourself.
Right.
Really.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you relate to all of that? Are you a doctrine guy? Are you a New Age theosophist? Are you how would I
describe myself?
How do you describe your interaction with the luminous?
I think from simplicity, I'd go with Christian, but I also think that like that's much different than when people hear that they have an immediate reaction and thought that is like I think you're already laughing because you know that what I mean by Christian is completely different than what most people would say.
Okay, well then I'm wondering why you would call it Christian,
right? Because
okay. This is why I'm asking.
From a data standpoint and from a belief standpoint, from all those things, I think there was a Jesus I believe there was a Jesus that had a spiritual side that walked the earth 2,000 years ago.
Okay.
Like those are factually true in my mind.
Okay.
There's no, I've dug enough. I believe all those things.
Okay.
I also believe that he said, it's been how many other interpretations, but I believe that he told some stories.
Yeah.
That had some good
Okay.
good, the Aesop's fables, right? Some good moral to the story.
Okay.
And so that's where I go with the Christian side of just like when you look at just Jesus, just Christ, right? The guy, and also the turn over the table of the money lenders, and let's
some other stuff you can get behind.
Yeah, some other stuff like he's not out there trying to start a bunch of wars. He's not. Yeah. There's a lot of disdain for ceremony.
You don't have a lot of disdain for ceremony?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do. And when I read that, right, like when I read something I've done recently again was read the whole New Testament just to kind of back up my.
Right.
And when you're reading the Gospels, and I read some of the apocryphal texts, and I just think from like a way to walk through the world of if I see somebody needing money, right, to give them money.
Yeah, simple.
It's not like this is not complicated.
Exemplar kind of stuff too.
Yeah, right. If people in prison, I just got done with a stint of doing some prison work for local university. I don't know if I'm supposed to say names. I don't care.
No,
WashU.
You don't have to,
but I will. So WashU, they have like a prison education program, and I did some I volunteered. It's not a volunteer program, but I volunteered for it. Why? Because my employer okayed it, and like that's what we do.
Why
right?
not?
If somebody's if somebody's committed some kind of crime, or at least been convicted of a crime, and this is supposed to be a system of rehabilitation, right? Then aren't we as society supposed to help along in that rehabilitation? Yeah, right. That's where I say it's not from like a deep
exemplar.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
From a values standpoint, and the actions all along, I can't find any fault in the actions or the words of what I've seen.
Yeah.
Now, what people have turned that into and turned the whole text into, I can't get behind or understand. Even I'm like, did you read the same thing I read? Because, I don't. I see you doing these other things that are so disconnected from.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah. Oh no. Okay, so digging a little deeper on that. Yeah. I mean, so is there? So where do you fall into like beliefs of afterlife, or the Father, the Holy Trinity?
Yeah, not so much like. So I think that Christianity does its best job to explain it with the Holy Spirit. That side, right? Yeah. That's where I'd fall into that all connected part. I think Christianity's, from what I've learned and been a churchgoer at times and done some things, that's the part that we all have. That's God, according to that religion. Yeah. So if it's in me and it's in you, then we're connected. That's God in me and God in you. So then God's in all of us. We're connected. I can get behind that. Yeah. Afterlife, I don't agree with what most of Christians preach, and I really don't, even as an afterlife as a concept. I don't really give. I used to give a lot of thought. I remember being younger, and when this brain would start going. One time, it was what's going to happen when I die, and it was like the big questions of the universe, and how many billions of years we've been around, and like how insignificant I am, and it really messed with me. Right. And now I'm just in the place of I'm going to die. Yeah.
Just let that whole debate go.
Yeah.
Me too, for sure.
Yeah. And when I do, does it, I'm not going to do anything different to try to earn an outcome. Right. So, because that seems to defeat the whole purpose of whatever I'm doing. Disingenuous. So instead, I'm just gonna
just do it.
And then if there really is this, I get to some place and there's a pearly gates, and they're like, hey man, you never said this, so you're not in. Right. Then I guess I'm not in. As long as every other non-Christian of the whole world, which is, by the way, most of the world. So I've got
at least another 6 billion of them.
Yeah. So I've got plenty of company at that point. Yeah. Of good people. I'll go hang out with the Dalai Lama, and Gandhi, and those guys.
I never got, you know, I mean, I've talked to different people about it too, but it's like, what concession is made for, I mean, I just asked these questions. This is like how I got to my non-theism.
Right.
It's like, so what concessions you make for the Aboriginals that don't speak your language?
Right.
How's that work?
Right.
Oh, wait, we didn't really think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's like script management.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, here's the box. There's all these exceptions to the box. How do you account for some of how do you account for that stuff? And then, so there's no satisfactory answer. So,
I've made the joke once, so just basically, like, there's enough religions just so God made enough religions so that way every idiot could get to him some way, right? Like we could all, like if people needed this doctrine, they can find it and they can get to whatever that universal source is.
And so other than the exemplar stuff, and which I don't disagree with that. It's like, well, here's an exemplar person to follow or learn from or modeling, whatever. But so where do you come down on the supernatural human deity that's not where do you come down on that?
Of Jesus as a person?
No. I'm saying Grandpa on the clouds listening to my everything. Prayer.
Well,
knowing the future.
Yeah. 100%. I don't think it's Grandpa in the clouds, but yes, 100% knowing the future. I think so. This is why. So you can remember where you went this morning, right?
Yes.
So you can remember backwards.
Yeah.
So it is not much of a leap for me, like zero leap, to when I thought of this years ago, of a being that can remember forwards. Like that doesn't even seem like
okay.
Like
okay. And so, even in the space-time continuum, they just maybe happen to be a little ahead of where we're at.
Right.
Okay.
They could be a little ahead, or they could be behind looking forward. Like at some point we all know that time isn't what we thought time was 60, 80 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So it's to be able to whatever power level of a being, whether there's a whole race of people of alien race that can all see into the future, like that doesn't, it's
not a big hang up.
It's not a big hang up because it's not even hard to imagine. Like if I can think that we're a pretty limited young species. Yeah. I mean, really limited, really fragile, really young.
In 315,000 years.
Yeah, you think this grand cosmos, like if you, that we can remember so much of present and past, for sure. We all universally agree on that. Not even talking about ancestral and.
Right.
So if we can all agree on that, then why do we think that some other species doesn't exist that's been around easily 100 times longer than us?
Right.
Easily, is conceptually in the universe.
Yeah.
That, like that. Yeah, I guess because I think that setting aside ego of we're this super race of evolved creatures, and just to think, like you said, 300 something thousand years young on this planet that isn't that old. It's like we're just we're the babies.
Random.
Yeah, we're just random babies, and there's
adolescents.
Like, if there's not something more in this huge, there has to be somebody that's looking at us going, yep, look at those toads over there.
And so that's a little leap that I don't make.
Okay.
Just because it's like if I can make use of and implement my spiritual connection and understanding without a particular deity, then I don't need the deity, right? And that's how my thinking goes along with that.
I think, but deity, I don't think of like a sentient being. Like that's why I say like I believe in that exists. So then I think there's something above that there has to be something connecting us, and the sentient doesn't have to be sentient like we understand it.
Okay.
And so then that would be a deity, right? That would be that could.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
It's just a all powerful force that is guiding me and Jennifer and giving me that intuition and guiding us to hear. And
that's the only separation it's like I think that it's like, first of all, I don't have to know. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have to know. I can just observe and just make use of what I see and feel and what is, right? Yeah. And so if something is, well, that connection's there, it's like, wow, the whole thing becomes mysterious.
Right.
And luminous. And it doesn't have to necessarily, invoke a being or some it's just like I don't know, like take like biological evolution for example. Right? So did we have to foresee the platypus? Like when the platypus didn't exist,
right?
There didn't have to be a plan for it.
Right.
It just happened.
Yep.
And it's good enough to see it and go, oh, that happened.
Right.
By whatever the mechanism was. Right? And again, removed from the time element. Mm-hmm. I don't exactly see all the I just see the results of the mechanisms.
Right.
Right? So that's where I stop. It's like I see the mechanisms by which I can remain peaceful and I can avail myself of the connectivity, right? If I'm plugged into it, but I don't invoke any supernatural being beyond that. Like it's good enough that I surrender.
Yeah.
Right? And then after that it doesn't matter.
The supernatural being helps me with. So if it's all connected and all those other things without a supernatural being, then there's a force, but it's not necessarily working for benefit. It's just there's a connectedness that's agnostic to the results, right?
Okay.
And that's where having a deity figure in there, whatever that formation looks like,
can tip the scale towards goodness, wholesome,
abundance,
connection.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's tipping the scale. Yes, in that way. Like there's an arc, right? There's a direction. And whereas connectedness to me doesn't lend the concept of a direction or a motive, something like that.
Okay.
And that,
I guess what I'm discovering.
Yeah.
And again, there's just not a comparison.
Yeah.
Obviously not. Right. But it's like, this or this or this or this. But what I'm discovering is that I've paired it back. I keep pairing it back to the, essential or whatever you want to call it. I just keep pairing it back, because even literally today or whatever, some discussions or debates, I don't know, whatever. But so the thing I've come to, like from my alcoholic drug-induced delusion, for me is like I don't want to layer, whether I know it or not, I don't want to layer some new, theistic delusion on top of delusion that I've just escaped from. Because and then it's like I got to undo that if that becomes delusional or whatever.
Right.
So it's more of a safety thing for me.
I don't want to layer delusion. But I do find value in the layering of discipline, right? Like if I believe in some kind of thing with some kind of like meditation as a practice to get in contact with this thing, then it gives me discipline, right? Like otherwise I can just say meditation is just because it's doing this biological thing to me.
Okay.
And it doesn't.
Sure.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I think so the
discipline
there's valuable in the practice and the discipline of it.
Yes.
The discipline result. Yeah.
We
talked briefly about prayer to somebody else. I forget who it was, but my experience with prayer was it's what manifests in me as I come to a prayer.
Yeah.
Right? Not that someone's answering it or that there is a someone that's pulling strings or whatever the case might be, right? It's like whether it's humility, right, or self-acknowledgement of my liabilities or whatever it is. Like when I come to like petition the universe, let's say.
Yeah.
Another word for prayer.
Right.
It's like, well, does it have to be this? Does it have to look like that? Does it have to have these words? Does it need to be that? No. And Todd and I talked about a state of prayer.
Right.
You know,
right.
or a state of meditation,
Right.
a state of listening, a state of speaking,
Yep.
whatever. And so I liken my practice more to that. It's not a time and a place, a specific words or whatever. It's just hey, I'm, even like coming here, like, hey, I want to connect with Matt. We're going to spend these times together, right?
Right.
Oh, we're going to share it with anybody that watches.
Yep.
Like there's a pleading for this to be what it's supposed to, or for what it can be or is or could be or whatever. We don't.
Yeah.
So I look at prayer that way, non-specific, but mostly for peace and acceptance, I think.
Yeah.
That's about it. I don't pray for outcomes or whatever anyway, so.
Yeah.
But I do pray, or have maybe a state of pleading or also,
Yeah. I'd go with this, and that state, I remember listening to you and Todd talk about that, and state of communication, right? Like, prayer is one portion of that community. So it's just like any good communication, any good relationship. I'm reading the body language, right? Whatever this universal thing is, that's like whatever's going on. This is the body language. There's all kinds of communication, prayer, some meditation, some being out in the world, experiencing all these parts are interact. If I allow it to be, I can be in a state of communication with this supernatural force.
Right.
That,
or just natural.
Yes, or natural. Yes.
Whichever way you want to talk about
right.
it. And again, though, I pull back from, if it happens, it's obviously natural.
Yes.
No, that doesn't mean I can quantify it.
But supernatural can be like, in my mind, like the supernatural. Like, this isn't just good water. This is super good water. The super, like you, I agree with you. It's natural. But it's the purest form of natural, right? Like, if you distill natural down to its core components and then disperse it and connect us all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, yeah.
It's not like you've talked about before. It's not natural to kill. It's not natural to do these things, right? Like, there's certain things that are unnatural.
Yeah.
And so you distill what is natural down and disperse it, and it really looks pretty similar to what we're both describing.
But that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying. It's like, okay. Yeah, it's like, what? Do I want to, or is there any need to attribute that to a supernatural being, quote unquote? And so anyway, that's where I like, no, I don't. There's not. To me, there doesn't seem to be any compulsion to do that. Whatever. Yeah, I guess it comes down to, like, is there a real cause and effect, I guess, too, or it's like Patty talks about the signs.
Yeah.
And I was like, all I can, and other people too.
Yeah.
It's like, well, the signs, and the only conclusion I can come to is like, the meaning of the signs is to see if I'm paying attention to signs.
Yeah.
It's not go left, go right. It's, hey, here's a sign that you're actually listening.
Yeah.
Right? Here's a sign that you're actually paying attention.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's, to me, that's the value of signs, whatever.
Yep.
Like whatever from the museum.
Right.
You were open to leaving that to the universe.
Right.
And the universe went, oh, I got a surprise for you.
Right.
3 days later.
Right.
But now also, I mean, that selection bias, survivorship bias, like how many other, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
We pay attention to the hits and discount the misses. Okay. I mean, I understand all this as well, but that's a pretty big hit.
Yeah.
That's not a.
Right. Yeah. And I've had some big hits. Yeah.
I mean, every day is a big hit. You know, I'm not trying to kill myself. That's a big hit.
Right.
Right. So we count ourselves lucky for that.
Yeah. Not trying to kill anybody else either. That's
not yet.
Yeah. That's a big one.
I'm open.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. What? Check the time. Let's see how long we are here.
Oh, look at that! Right on the nose.
Is it quarter till?
Right, the alarm just went off when I went out of the pocket. Just right on that, the big signs, right? Like again, the synchronicity, just the
alarm went off. Yeah. Well, or my keen sense of timing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes. Love you, buddy.
Love you too. Thank you very much for having me.
That's been awesome. Thanks for staying tuned. Share, subscribe, like. Matt, really appreciate you coming in. Stay tuned for more REPHETIC conversations. Yeah. We'll pick it up on the flip side.
Great. Thank you.
Later. To know who we are, and where we're going, we must know how we arrived here. Welcome to REPHETIC, a revolutionary study of the Great Pyramid, which promises to rewrite civilization's history.